The world of business is constantly evolving, and Comcast Business keeps you totally in step with secure, AI-backed networking in more than 100 countries. They're powering over 90% of the Fortune 500 and millions of small businesses. That's a lot of muscle. And behind it all, thousands of experts answering your call at 2 a.m. like it's 2 p.m. One partner, powering how business gets done for companies around the globe. When you add it all up, no one does business like Comcast Business.
Ever notice how life's best stories don't happen in your living room? They happen on the open road, out on the water, or parked under the stars. At Progressive, they get that you want to focus on the experience, not worry about the what-ifs. That's why they offer quality insurance designed for your ride, whether that's a boat, RV, or motorcycle. Adventure with confidence. Visit Progressive.com and see how easy it is to protect your favorite way to get away. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in D.C. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kilowatt, a podcast about electric vehicles, renewable energy, autonomous driving, and much, much more. My name is Bodie, and I am your host, and I have got a big show for you this week. So I've decided I'm splitting the week into two different pieces because, you know, I'm often, the show is supposed to be released on Tuesday and Friday. And I think I'm going to change my philosophy a little bit because I tried to record this episode like 3 times yesterday and I got interrupted every single time. So I need to have a different strategy. And I think what my strategy is going to be is there's going to be a weekly show, which could happen any day between Monday and Thursday. That's the weekly episode or weekly edition. And then there's going to be a weekend edition, which could happen Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. And that kind of gives me time to put together a decent show for you, honestly. You know, there's just like between my full-time job, my part-time job, and doing all the podcasts that I do, including this one, I just am not, it's really hard to hit Tuesday and Friday. Now, in a year and a month or so, when I retire, that should be a lot easier. So to hit those days. But for right now, we have a weekend edition and a week edition, weekly edition of this show, because that's really like I'm dedicated to doing the show, just getting the show on time, just based on all of the things that are going on right now. It's just really difficult to be on time. So weekend edition and weekly edition. This will be the weekend edition. And the last time we talked, we actually covered the EV news stories. This time is going to be Tesla news stories. I do want to say, like when I started this whole process off, we had like in the queue for shows, for articles for the show, we had about 147 articles in the show queue. That doesn't mean I'm going to cover 147 articles, and a lot of those are repeat articles and so on and so forth. But that's a lot to get through. And so last episode, I decided to do just EV only stories to try to kind of clear that queue out. And as it stands in the EV only queue, we have about 28 stories. So that's good. In the Tesla queue, we only have 4 stories that I haven't covered yet. So that's good. And I plan on covering all 4 in the future. And then we have autonomous and renewable queues. There's about 7 stories between those. So, yeah, I mean, I am very much somebody that needs to complete things and not have stuff stuck in the queue. So this makes me feel very, very good. I covered today, we're going to do a Tesla-focused episode, like I said, and we have 12 articles that I pulled from for today's episode. Normally in a show, we have like 6 or 7, so 12, just to kind of, like I said, clear those queues out so that they're manageable, because there's lots of stuff that I want to talk about. Some of the stuff becomes irrelevant because we find out new things. Some of the stuff becomes irrelevant because just enough time has passed and it's not important anymore. So yeah, that's where we're at with the show. Let's go ahead and dive into our first story. California put aside $135 million in EV incentives. And the purpose of these incentives is to help first-time EV buyers. No application is required. You just got to be a first-time EV buyer and you qualify. But there are caps on the vehicles. You can't just go out and buy a Lucid Sapphire, for instance. Keep that in the back of your head because that's not exactly true what I just said. So the caps on new vehicles will be $50,000 and $25,000. Now there's a number of EVs that are under $50,000 for a new vehicle, and there's a number of EVs that are under $25,000 for a new vehicle. A used vehicle. Tesla, in general, does have some vehicles that are under $50,000. They have a couple of trims. I think it's 3 that qualify. But here's the thing. Tesla is a little bit at a disadvantage. And the reason why is California-based automakers, so look at Rivian and look at Lucid, they don't have any limit on the purchase price. So if you go out and you buy a $250,000 Lucid Sapphire, you would qualify for whatever the EV incentive is. If you go out and buy a Rivian, or let's say an R1S for $120,000, there's no cap because Rivians and Lucid are based in California, even though their factories aren't in California. Now, Tesla was based in California and decided to leave California for a variety of different reasons. And they are now a Texas company and, not California based. And actually, I think they're a Delaware company. So even still. But yeah, overall, this seems to be like on the surface targeting Tesla, but like Hyundai and Chevy and Ford selling EVs in California, they fall into the same thing. It's not specifically a jab necessarily at Tesla, but if you look at just the headlines, it certainly sounded like Tesla or California wrote this to exclude Tesla on a lot of different levels. And in reality, I'm not saying that that's not true, but it's not wholly true. Chevy, Ford, Hyundai, any other company out there that's building an EV that's not based in California, they're just so happens that Lucid and Rivian happen to be in California. So they're like no max on that one, on those two. But I don't like it when government, I feel like this is kind of picking winners and losers because neither Lucid nor Rivian do any of their manufacturing in California. So it does feel to me like it might be a little bit of a snub towards other automakers. I would even, I don't know. I have a problem with this kind of thing, just in general. I would feel more comfortable about it if Lucid and Rivian had an actual manufacturing presence in the state, but they don't. So anyway, it still, to me, it still feels very much like they're picking winners and losers. All right. Most of the rest of this episode is going to be about Robotaxis and CyberCab. So let's start off with Robotaxis, and then we'll get into CyberCab. And I think we end up, let me see here. I think we end up with talking about FSD and a little bit extra Robotaxi stuff. So I want to be specific. Like Robotaxi just has to do with the service. CyberCab has to do with the car itself. I do see some people online using those things interchangeably. They're not. CyberCab is the little bitty 2-seater car, and the Robotaxi is whatever is operating on the Robotaxi network for Tesla. All right. So Tesla has launched a few unsupervised Robotaxis in Miami, Florida. They're operating in a geofenced area. So as far as we can tell, the geofenced area is about 10 to 14 square miles. We have no idea how many unsupervised robotaxis are currently operating in Miami, although we can reasonably expect that there's just a handful. And then in terms of robotaxi news, Tesla started operating their robotaxi service in New Orleans in Louisiana. So that's cool. So we just recently added Florida and Louisiana to the robotaxi network. I don't think any of the ones in Louisiana or in New Orleans are unsupervised rides at this point. I wouldn't be surprised to see that they are in the future. Now, my problem is way back in February, I went to an event for first responders, for firefighters, and Tesla reps. We were out there talking, and it sounded like Robotaxi was just right around the corner here in Arizona, and I live in the land of Robotaxis. And I haven't seen any yet. I've seen cybercabs. I've even seen a Model Y that had Robotaxi written on the side right outside my neighborhood at a little restaurant for breakfast place. However, I'm not 100% sure that would belong to Tesla. That might have just been a fan that put that on there because it didn't look like it was professionally done, but that doesn't mean it wasn't Tesla's. It just, I don't know. My general feeling on it was like, this looks like a sticker that, somebody just threw on here, but what do I know? I didn't stick around to ask. All right, let's get to our CyberCab news. We have a little bit more information on the CyberCab specifically. And some of this is not surprising. Like, for instance, it's going to have a 48-volt architecture. Tesla's doing this on, as far as I know, all of their new vehicles. So that's not new. It's going to have 4680 battery cells. That's not a huge surprise. It'll have steer-by-wire, which the Cybertruck has. Let's see, 400-volt battery pack. Also, not a huge surprise. Tesla, other than the Cybercab, or not the Cybercab, excuse me, other than the Cybertruck, Tesla's vehicles aren't. We're not talking like 800, 900,000 volt like Hyundai's are or Lucids. This is pretty common for Tesla. And then dual GPS for better positioning. This makes a lot of sense if you're going to be selling a vehicle that's exclusively level 4, and I'm using air quotes for level 4. I mean, I would imagine that it is level 4, but we'll talk about that more in just a moment. But why I'm using air quotes for level 4, and you can't see me do it. So yeah, the dual GPS positioning makes sense as well.
Modern enterprise is made up of a lot of moving parts, and Comcast Business helps you orchestrate it all. With SD-WAN working at scale to keep 150 hospital locations connected and working as one. Plus, SASE and Zero Trust Security protecting financial data across a bank's 2,000 branches. And AI-powered networking that optimizes traffic across 5 continents. No one does business like Comcast Business.
Adventures don't always go as planned. One minute you're cruising in your RV, the next, your tire hits a massive pothole. Progressive is ready for you when the unexpected hits, with excellent claim service for your boat, RV, and motorcycle. Plus, optional coverage like roadside assistance and on-the-water towing. Visit Progressive.com and make sure your next adventure is unforgettable, for the right reasons. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Coverage is subject to policy terms and limits.
Okay, so we've kind of talked about some of the not superficial, but, kind of gee whiz, sort of interesting hardware that's going to go into the CyberCab. Let's talk a little bit more about FSD, full self-driving, and the CyberCab. Because again, if you are running a vehicle that is supposed to be level 4, not have any sort of human inputs in terms of, being able to, hit an accelerator or tap a brake or whatever, steer. If you don't have any of those functions, then you're definitely going to want to make sure that you're running the highest tech possible. So currently, whether it's hardware 3, AI3, AI4, we're still sitting at level 2 autonomy. We have not reached level 3 in the consumer version of FSD. Now, Tesla will be in the CyberCab, according to Not a Tesla app. They talked to a very reliable source. I don't know what that means, other than Not a Tesla app thinks that they're trustworthy. but I don't know them personally, is what I'm saying. So they may be wrong, but I don't think they are. And by the way, I think Not a Tesla App is a great site for Tesla news. They bend a little bit pro Tesla, but in general, I think they do an amazing job. So according to Not a Tesla App, the CyberCab, the production version of the CyberCab, and again, production is important here, and I'm using air quotes there as well. But the production version of the CyberCab will be running a more powerful version of Tesla's FSD computer, which makes total sense. Again, level 4 need to have a more powerful version, more powerful than than Model 3 or Model Y or what the Cybertruck's running at the time. And really what this comes down to, according to their source, is it's going to have a lot more RAM than what comes in the standard FSD package right now. It's almost certainly going to be running AI4 Plus chip, the AI4 Plus chip or Hardware 4 Plus chip. And that's supposed to give a lot more compute, a lot more headroom. This is, something that Tesla or Elon talked about, I think in the last earnings call, but it might have been the one before that. So we know that this is coming. And it makes total sense that Tesla would be putting this in their most advanced autonomous driving cars. We're not sure how much how much extra RAM Tesla is going to be adding in this system. And since we don't know, I'm not going to speculate. I do think Not a Tesla App, they kind of went through and they're like, well, it's got this much now. It's probably going to need this much, blah, blah, blah. It really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. It's going to be beefier than what the Model Y, the 3, or the Cybertruck has until those vehicles catch up technology-wise. Now, on to something that I thought was very funny, that this even became somebody generated an article. Multiple people created an article out of this, but there's a video that Tesla actually deleted, but the video shows, and you can go to Not a Tesla App and you can watch the video, and I'll put a link in the show notes. But there was these people are standing outside, presumably Tesla's Austin, Texas headquarters, the Gigafactory in Austin, on Tesla property. Let's put it that way. And there's some people standing out there. The CyberCab comes and picks them up. There's no steering wheel, no pedals, no brake. They get in the car and they are traveling wherever they're going. Again, still on a Tesla property, because these vehicles cannot be driven outside of private property. And while the car is driving, they put on a movie, which is cool. And one of the people in the seat, they're actually sitting in what would be the driver's seat, or the right side of the car. They have the Tesla app up, and you can see the animation that is shown when you're adjusting the vents for like the AC or the heat. And that caused quite a stir, because you'd be able to change, the climate controls, basically, we can assume, inside the Robotaxi app. And I thought, well, that's really silly that people are, making kind of a big deal about this. But in reality, when I started to think about it, I was like, when I'm sitting and waiting for my kids to get done with one of their, what seems like endless activities that they're doing now that they are going into high school and such, when I'm sitting there waiting for them, I'm in my car. I usually am working on my laptop, and I have something on the screen, like whether it's a YouTube video or Netflix or Hulu or whatever. And occasionally, especially in the summertime, the air conditioning will be on long enough where I actually start getting cold. And I would like to be able to adjust the climate controls without getting out of the screen. Now, I know you can kind of minimize the screen down, and you can do the climate controls and then come back up, but being able to do that in the app actually kind of makes a lot of sense. And even going further than that, right? My kids do not have control of the AC in the back seat of my Model Y. My Model Y is older, so they don't have that little screen back there. giving them the ability to connect to my Tesla and change the climate for them in the back would be fantastic. Now, I don't know because I have not always said, I have not always agreed with what Elon has said in the past. I don't know if this is something that I could go on Twitter and post about, or X and post about, and maybe get that to be a thing. But I that would be so cool if my kids didn't have to ask me to turn it up 2 clicks, or turn the fan up 2 clicks, or down 1 click, or blah, blah, blah. You could just take care of it in the back. And if they're going to fight about it, they're 14, almost 14 years old. They can fight about it amongst themselves and not take my attention away from driving. And really, it's honestly silly that, adults or anybody in the back seat would have to ask you to turn, in today's day and age, to turn the air conditioner up or down. So, yeah. And in my case, air conditioner, because, I live in what is a very uncomfortable place heat wise in the summertime. Let's see. Yeah. So that's all I had to say about that. I'm sure that there would be other things that you could change via the Robotaxi app as well. I don't know what the reason for Tesla deleting the video was, but you can watch the full video on Not a Tesla app on their website. It's not crazy. I wouldn't, like, if they didn't mean to send it out, I wouldn't be mad about it being out there. So I don't know. Okay, let's dig into some CyberCab First Responder guide stuff. So, if you don't know, Tesla and other automakers and battery makers, like whole home battery makers and things like that, they have these first responder guides. So that tells us as first responders how to interact with the vehicle. Well, the CyberCab has some cool features, and I have not read the first responder guide. That is something that I will be doing over the next couple of weeks. So I'll bring you updates. But I haven't read the first responder guide yet. But I have, I read a couple articles that, had little bits of fun tidbits for the general public in there. The first thing is a neat little note that is in the first responder guide. It says, a CyberCab equipped with a steering wheel, brake pedal, and acceleration pedal is typically an engineering or test vehicle and operates at SAE, Society of Automotive Engineers, level 2 autonomy. So if I didn't say it before, these are test or engineering vehicles. That does not mean that all CyberCabs are going to be operating at level 2 autonomy. According to the guide, if the CyberCab does not have human input in terms of steering wheel, brake pedal, and accelerator, then that CyberCab has level 4 autonomy. And it's, not certified under any state, as far as I know, other than Texas, of self-certified at level 4 under the new Texas law. So when the vehicle's operating in autonomous mode, it'll actually display self-driving at the top left corner of the screen. This is important because when it's operating under autonomy, in full autonomy mode or in level 4 autonomy mode, it is in that mode, whether it is sitting still and idling or waiting at a light or whatever. So that's important for us as firefighters to know, because we do not want to inadvertently step in front of this vehicle when it's deciding to go, or we don't want to be, interacting with it when it could drive away. Now, will it drive away? I don't know, but we certainly, as firefighters, will make sure that a car is disabled or disabled enough before we start interacting with it. So in a normal, like, car accident type of a situation, what we'll end up doing is we'll be like, let's just say somebody's asleep at a light for whatever reason. Maybe it's because they had some sort of diabetic emergency. Maybe, they're really sleepy, or maybe, there's something drug related, which are all pretty common. We would go up, before we interact with that car, we're going to make sure, one, that the driver's not really going to wake up. So nobody's going to walk in front or behind the car. We're all going to stay to the side. We might knock on the window if the person does not, like, if we can't get them to wake up easily, then we're going to put like these big old wheel chocks that we use for the fire truck underneath the tires. We're going to make sure that before we open up the door, we can kind of see inside and we're not going to accidentally get yeeted. Somebody doesn't have a weapon. We're going to make sure, once we open up the vehicle, no matter how we do that, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put the car in park. How do you do that with an autonomous vehicle other than chalking the wheels? And Tesla's tires, Tesla's got like 30-inch wheels for that that little teeny tiny car, just these massive wheels. So we're going to want to make sure that we can disable this vehicle. Well, according to the guide, when the vehicle's operating in this mode, the cameras and microphones, there are cameras and microphones in the B pillar that will recognize emergency lights and sirens, and the vehicle will actually pull over in that situation. Now, it's supposed to, at some level, not take off if the lights and sirens are behind it. But again, this is not something we're going to trust our lives to, because we do not want to be dead or injured. And at this B pillar, first responders will actually be able to chat, make hand gestures, and, basically Robotaxi support should be able to see them and hear them. If for some reason, they can't, then that's where the hand gestures come in. But the support folks can communicate back to the first responders via a speaker system that's underneath the chassis of the vehicle. So for firefighters, and what I'm going to teach the folks that I work with is that this is how we interact with the support people. I'm sure there'll also be a phone number, but if for some reason, if there's an accident or an emergency or whatever inside the cab, for whatever reason that we're interacting with it, we want to make sure before we start putting our bodies in harm's way, that vehicle is disabled. To disable, according to the guide, to disable autonomous mode, there's only 4 ways to do it. One is a Tesla rep has to disable it, which would be the person we're talking to at the B pillar or maybe on the phone. 2, the car senses that it is plugged into a charger, and then that will disable it. And there's actually a device for this that first responders have. And I'll talk about that in just a second. And then the other way to disable it, it says, is if a first responder pulls it over. But, again, this is not something, that is not a thing we're going to trust. The Tesla rep saying that it's disabled and the fact that it pulls over for us, we're not going to trust that implicitly. We're still going to chalk the wheels and we're going to exercise caution around that vehicle. The other is when the airbags goes off or detects a crash. That's the last way it will detect. And in that situation, I would probably feel fairly comfortable that it was disabled, but we're still going to chalk the wheels. We might even cut the first responder loop anyway, just to make sure that everything is good when we're operating around the vehicle. But this device that I was talking about, it's like a little handheld device, and on one end is a NACS connector, and on the other end is a CCS connector. And when you plug that into the charging port, it actually disables. You can't put it in drive and go. So that would be a way and might be a reason for having one of those. I do know that there has been some concern expressed in this device, because if the battery is like, could we potentially be causing more danger by plugging it in? I don't think so, because of a bunch of different reasons. But some people are like, was it going to reactivate the battery? Is it going to do this? Is it going to do that? And my response to that is, if you cut first of all, if the accident is big enough, right, and you're concerned about it reactivating the battery is already activated no matter what. If the car detects it, there's a pyrotechnic inside that separates the high voltage battery from the rest of the components, and you can always cut the cut loop as first responders. So I don't think it's that big of a deal myself, but there are some people out there who think that it's going to cause the battery to catch on fire or something like that. I'm not concerned about that. But anyway, I kind of thought that was interesting. Hopefully you thought it was interesting and not incredibly boring. But yeah, it is going to be like all of this, no matter if it's Zoox or not Moa. What's the other one? The Volkswagen one. Blanking on it. But anyway, all of these Moa. Anyway, all of these Robotaxi services that are out there, Waymo and such, interacting with them when there's autonomous driving is there's just going to have to be like a standard way for first responders to interact with them. It doesn't mean there has to be a standard way to necessarily disable them, because, every one of these companies has a different vehicle and that's going to require different disabling. You're going to have to work through the different ways to disable it. It's more like, how do we get in touch with support? How do we make sure we're doing the right things before we put firefighters or even pedestrians operating around the vehicle in harm's way? Because the first thing when there's an accident, you have people with the best intentions that decide to go and help.
Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why drivers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years now. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they'll show you options that fit your budget. So whether you're picking out your first policy or just looking for something that works better for you and your family, they make it easy to see your options. Visit Progressive.com. Find a rate that works for you with the Name Your Price tool. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Introducing the Total Solutions Advantage only from Comcast Business. It's the largest, fastest fiber-powered network for small business, gig speeds with equipment and security included, and a 5-year price lock. No one does business like Comcast Business.
Switch today. Get started for $60 a month for 12 months when you add an advanced solution to a qualifying internet package. Limited time offer. Restrictions apply. New customers only. Requires 300 megabits per second internet, security edge, and additional qualifying service. 1-year agreement, paperless billing, and autopay with bank account required. Taxes and fees extra.
Ever notice how life's best stories don't happen in your living room? They happen on the open road, out on the water, or parked under the stars. At Progressive, they get that you want to focus on the experience, not worry about the what-ifs. That's why they offer quality insurance designed for your ride, whether that's a boat, RV, or motorcycle. Adventure with confidence. Visit Progressive.com and see how easy it is to protect your favorite way to get away. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in D.C. Prices vary based on how you buy.
I've been on plenty of calls where we were dispatched to the initial call of an accident, and then we're now sending more units because a Good Samaritan was struck, or something else happened to them. Maybe they got cut when they were trying to get somebody out of a car or something to that effect, right? They got injured in some way. So what we don't want, obviously, is for an accident or something to occur and then a robotaxi, no matter who's operating it, injure somebody else that's trying to be a Good Samaritan. Okie doke. We're down to our last few stories here, starting off with a post on X from Chris GBT. It's Chris, standard spelling, with 2 S's, GPT, like Chat GPT, on X. Had this to say: FSD would be twice as useful in neighborhoods if I could actually talk to my car and tell it which driveway to pull into, the same way I would a person driving me home. And Ashok Elaswamy, who is in charge of FSD at Tesla, said working on it. Now, in order for this to happen, one, I do believe, and correct me if I'm wrong because I don't have full self-driving, but doesn't your Tesla know where you live when you set it at home? Or doesn't your Tesla know where you're going when you put in an address to maybe a friend or family member's house? Wouldn't it automatically put you at least in the area of where the driveway is? Maybe it doesn't drive you straight up onto the driveway. But according to the article that I read that put this whole thing out there, that would mean a tighter integration with Grok, because basically you were saying to your car, hey, pull in here on the right. And I know there are some people out there who listen to the show who have some concerns with um, talking directly to Grok and having Grok in charge of your car. How would people out there feel about this? Would it be something that would be really useful? Would you use it? Would you be worried because it is Grok? I don't think Grok, Tesla already knows where you are, so I don't think that's your personal information is a problem. I think it's, more of people are really kind of apprehensive about Grok. Tesla, Elon said publicly that Grok, they kind of got it wrong in the beginning. They're going to have to rewrite a lot of it, if not all of it. He's gone on to say that Anthropic, Elon's gone on to say that they were wrong about Anthropic and stuff like that. So, do we think Grok is there to that level yet? I talk to Grok sometimes in my car. I don't have a problem specifically with Grok. And I think it does okay. I don't ask it to do anything hard. It's mostly like, how old was Michael Landon when he died? And that kind of things, just like random things that pop up in your head when you're driving. And it does fine at that kind of stuff. What does everybody think about having it? Obviously Tesla is definitely pushing to have Grok have more capabilities in the car. So, and interactions with the car. So just kind of thought, what everybody think. Bodie, Bodie at 918digital.com. All right. Pierre Ferregu and I'm saying the name terrible. I kind of said Pierre, right? But I definitely butchered his last name, of New Street Research, thinks that self-driving, or FSD, could be Tesla's iPhone moment. And his argument is that when the iPhone launched, people were complaining because it was $600 and they didn't really see a use for it. And admittedly, when the iPhone launched, it did have more capabilities or maybe fuller features than a lot of other phones in its category had. But it wasn't like what we have today, right? It didn't have GPS maps. It didn't have apps in general. It did a few things. It did a few things well, and that was about it. It was slow. It was like on 3G or something, like 2G. So anyway, but his thought is that FSD is about to have its FSD moment, iPhone moment, excuse me. And that is when people realized that it wasn't just a phone, it was a camera, it could be a GPS, it was a music player, it was a web browser. Are you getting it? This computer in your pocket. The "are you getting it" part is a throwback to Steve Jobs, if you don't know. Anyway, consumers saw value, right, after a time. And it wasn't after the first iPhone came out, really. It was after several iterations of the iPhone that they started to really see value in it. Farragut believes that Tesla is on a similar path. His argument is that people currently evaluate Tesla as if it's just another car. But once they can experience the capabilities of what Tesla has to offer in terms of autonomous driving, they'll see it as something that is much more than just transport. Although that's exactly what full self-driving is transport, but that's fine. And the higher price, which is $99 a month here in the United States, will feel justified. He also says that Tesla has roughly 2 more quarters of development, Tesla is currently 2 more quarters of development away from things really changing in terms of, having its iPhone moment. While I do think this is an interesting analogy, I think it's missing some important details. For instance, initially the iPhone cost $600. That's, not nothing 15 years ago or whenever the iPhone came out. But it's not $37,000 or $100,000 which is what a Tesla costs now, depending on which model you go with and trim. So, it could be even more depending on what you add to it. So even if full self-driving is as impressive as Pierre thinks it's going to be, you still have the financial hurdle of buying or leasing the car and then paying another $99 a month on top of that. Phones, like iPhones or Android phones, are often subsidized by carriers. Not always. You can buy it outright, but in a lot of cases, they're subsidized. You can also go, like, if you buy an iPhone and you don't like AT&T, you could, because you're paying too much money, you could go to a company like Visible, who up until recently was my phone carrier, and I love Visible. I only went to Cox cell phone plan because it still uses Verizon's network like Visible does, and it costs about the same. It's about $30 a month per phone that I have on my plan. And Cox offered me a better subsidy when I bought my iPhone 17. So that's the only reason why I'm with Cox. But the point is you can go for a brand like AT&T and pay more money, or you can switch and you can go to a brand like Visible and pay $25 a month. We don't have that same kind of thing with full self-driving. So I don't think I see where he's going, but I do not think that is what's happening here with full self-driving. At some point in time, people will recognize that full self-driving is beneficial. I 100% agree with that. I do not think that it's even a close comparison to the iPhone or smartphones in general, if you want to include Android in there. It's just not. The money's not the same. You have way more choice in terms of, like, you can't buy a Tesla and decide that you want Waymo to be your full self-driving option. And I do see that at some point in time, full self-driving, whether that's through Waymo, Tesla, or somebody else, right, for personal use, I do see that as, people seeing that as like, oh, this is way better because now I can do whatever in my car, sleep, watch TV, work on stuff. And they can reclaim a little bit of their time or just stare at the window, that there is value in that. So I do see that as being a benefit. And I do see that will carry people over to vehicles that offer level 4 or level 5 autonomy. But in the situation that we're in right now, I don't think we're 2 quarters away from this really changing, one. And two, I don't necessarily see this as, I don't know. There's just a lot. There's a lot riding on this one particular analogy. And it doesn't track with me. But I overall, I see his point. Like, at some point in time, people will see the value in full self-driving, and once they see that, it will be they'll be willing to maybe pay a little bit more. Although I do think we're getting to a point now where other companies are catching up to where Tesla is now, where they might be in 3 months or 4 months or 6 months. Who knows? But right now, companies are getting pretty close. Or close enough, I should say. Like my wife's car, we didn't pay any extra for the features that my wife's car has, and it has automatic lane keep. It has, basically cruise control, and then you can tell it, I want to stay this far away from the car in front of me or whatever, and it's basically autopilot, maybe a little bit more advanced than what I have in my Tesla for autopilot because Tesla stopped developing autopilot. But it works pretty good, like it works for a lot of what I would use it for. Is it close to full self-driving? No, but neither is Tesla. So, as of right now, maybe in a couple months, they'll be closer. Anyway. All right. I'm going to stop belaboring that. Let's see. Oh, and this is another neat Robotaxi app feature. And, when I wrote this, I did not anticipate having 40 minutes worth of content. So you'll have to forgive me if I'm going back and forth a little bit. But with the Robotaxi app, when you hail a Robotaxi, you will now get a message whether or not your car has a safety driver or not. I like this. I like to be able to, one, know that the car will have somebody else in it or not. But also, I kind of want to know, just because I'm a friendly person and I like having conversations with people, but sometimes I just want to sit in silence, and somebody like a Waymo showing up with a driver in the front seat, even though Waymos in my area don't usually have drivers or ever have drivers in the front seat anymore. It's kind of nice to know that I can just get into that car and just not think about or interact with anybody and kind of recharge just by being by myself. So, I don't know. From my perspective, I kind of like that. It doesn't look like it notifies you if there's a safety monitor in the car. So in San Francisco, for instance, there has to be a safety driver. In Austin, there's a safety monitor in some of the cars, and that safety monitor sits in a passenger seat. It doesn't seem like it tells you whether or not that person's there, but I think they should. I definitely think they should. Let's see. This is our final story. Thank you, everybody, for hanging with me for this long. More information is coming out about the New Jersey Robotaxi bill that we spoke about a few weeks ago. Basically, if you're not familiar, the bill was written in a way that doesn't match up with how Tesla is doing autonomous driving. It's a 3-year pilot program. Tesla's like they're purposely targeting us in this bill. I don't think they are, but it definitely isn't the way Tesla's doing things. So I can see why maybe they would have that take. But we have a little bit extra information, and I don't know if I mentioned this or not. That's why I'm mentioning it here. But the Robotaxi bill from New Jersey says that you need a camera plus 2 other sensing modalities in addition to a driver. And those other sensing modalities could be like a radar and LiDAR, for instance. Now, Tesla doesn't use radar or LiDAR and hasn't for a number of years. They're a camera-only system. But Tesla does, where they do use like LiDAR and stuff like that, they use it on their validation or test vehicles or maybe even mapping vehicles. So what I think Tesla should do is embrace this New Jersey bill as an opportunity for testing. They can try all sorts of weird things that would comply with the bill, right? They can just try like just random stuff. Just use it as an area to experiment in New Jersey while still operating your test robotaxi service, and just get weird. And when people are like, hey, I saw this Model Y equipped with LiDAR and I don't know, like a sarcastic pelican that you would find on like the Flintstones, you could just go back and be like, hey, we're required to have 2 different sensor modalities. And that sarcastic pelican, they graduated top of their class. It's a living, as they would say. So my general thought is Tesla should use this to their advantage and just get weird and try weird things. And even, Elon is goofy enough to do this. Just do the weirdest stuff. Maybe it has no advantage at all in terms of advancing your path to self-driving. Maybe it's just silly. Just go out and do silly things. I rather than complain about it, embrace it and make it weird. That's one of the things that I liked about Tesla early on, is they have like everything. Well, not everything. A lot of what they do has a wink and a smile to it. So just go in here, follow the rules, and be silly. I think that's the best way to kind of deal with this particular bill. All right, everybody, that is it for me. As you can see, this was a longer episode. I hope you all enjoyed it. Coming into this week, I do have one interview that I haven't played yet, and that's with Sean from New Zealand. So we will play that this week. I haven't decided if I'm going to play it in addition to the 2 regular shows that we do, the weekly edition and the weekend edition. I haven't decided if I'm going to do that or if I'm just going to put it out there as a 3rd episode this week. We'll kind of see and play it by ear. All right, everybody. If you want to email me, it's Bodie, BODIE at 918digital.com. I am, depending on when you listen to this, I'm going to be on the Car Stuff podcast on July 13th. So I would highly encourage you to go subscribe to Tom and Jill, and you'll get to hear me there if you're interested. And you can follow me on LinkedIn. It's just Bodie Grimm, BODIE GRIMM. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. And I will talk to you for our next weekly edition, whatever that may be and whenever it may be.